Obligations are tasks or actions to be completed throughout the life cycle of a contract. If there are any obligations already on the contract, they will be listed here on the obligation screen. They may be here already if they were added to the contract template that was used to create this contract. Click the Add Obligation button to create a new one. You'll see two options in the drop-down menu: add a new obligation from scratch, or choose from the library. Obligations that are already stored in the library will have pre-configured text and settings that can be quickly added to this contract or adjusted specifically for this instance. In the Add New Obligation overlay, determine a name and description of the obligation. Tags allow for the classification of the obligation and can be used to categorize contracts, search for specific records, or just for reporting purposes. Next, choose from some options. First, decide if documentation for the obligation is required or not. If this is selected, it will require the user marking this obligation complete to upload a file. Then, if you have the JAGGAER invoicing solution, decide whether or not the user should be prompted to create an invoice when they mark the obligation complete. If this option is selected, then a Create Invoice overlay will appear immediately after the user clicks the Mark as Complete button on the obligation. There are two options for frequency: a one-time obligation or recurring. Depending on which option is chosen, different fields will appear to determine when obligations will start and end. Then select the time of day and time zone in which this obligation is due. The next screen is used to set the owners and stakeholders for this obligation. Click Add New to specify which users will be responsible for the obligation. You can select owners and stakeholders from the first party and stakeholders from the second party. The person dropdown includes users who are in the role of the contract manager and the ability to search for and choose a specific user. If any notes or specific tasks belong to this owner or stakeholder, use the text box to describe what it entails. Finally, use the checkboxes to determine the notifications that will be sent about completing the obligation. You can use the Save and Add Another button to quickly add additional owners and stakeholders. Click Save to add these new owners or stakeholders to the contract obligation. You can also set advanced notice settings that will determine when notifications are sent out to users about this obligation. Save changes to add this obligation and its pertinent users to the contract. After the obligation is added to the contract, it can be viewed in Summary, edited, or canceled from the Actions dropdown next to it. If the obligation requires documentation, you'll see the paperclip icon. And if it is an invoice-associated obligation, it will be indicated with this icon. To learn more about how to mark an obligation complete, please see the video titled Marking Obligations Complete.